This is the IBJ Podcast for the week of August 13th, 2018. I'm Mason King. Have you ever wanted to just quit your job, pull up stakes, and travel the world doing good works for people in need? Don't bother denying it. Yeah. It's a fun fantasy for a few minutes or even a few hours, but most of us come up with reasons for staying put. Cassie Stockamp did not. Now, you might know Cassie as the top executive at the Athenaeum Foundation or the founder of Monumental Yoga. At the age of 57, when most folks are furiously trying to pad their 401ks, Stockamp has decided to quit her high-powered job and spend at least all of 2019 volunteering for not-for-profits all over the world. Now, of course, we Hoosiers tend to be a bit risk-adverse, so I asked her this week to explain in detail why she wants to do this and how she plans to make it work. Now, we also talked in depth about her accomplishments after more than a decade in charge of the landmark Athenaeum downtown and how it fits into Mass Ave as the corridor undergoes an incredible transformation. Okay, Cassie, you're 57.
I am.
Sorry to let the cat out of the bag so quickly. You're 57 years old. You've been as president of a prominent local not-for-profit for 11 years. You are in your prime earning years.
Why?
Hold on. I have more. You've created one of the best attended and most unique annual fitness events in the city. Your expenses, I'm assuming, are fairly low. In a couple of years, you could start claiming Social Security. I would say, hey, Cassie, hold tight. Write it out. You are not doing that. What are you doing?
It's funny you say that because when I go into my left brain, my logical brain, that's exactly the questioning. What are you doing? This is your prime earning years. You don't have enough money in your 401k, blah, blah, blah. And then I get centered and I go back to who I am. And we're writing our own stories. And I'm ready to live a different story. I've had an amazing opportunity here. I can't tell you how much I've been blessed by this crazy old historic building. But I know there's something else too. Yeah. So, I mean, I think when you and I spoke last, I hear that inner voice saying, there's something else out there.
Yeah. So just kind of outline
what I'm doing
very briefly, the Reader's Digest version. What are you going to do?
So let's start with saying that all the advice I'm getting from people that are doing this, and there are a lot of young people, not many people my age, but more young people, and all their advice is to plan less. So yes, it's really fascinating. So my loose itinerary is, just a loose idea is I just want to volunteer my way around the world. Mm-hmm. So my first soft landing will be in Sydney at a yoga retreat center. Well, I will go and teach yoga in exchange for room and board. General broad ideas, I'm taking a backpack, a month a country, and I want to volunteer and go into the community. I'll do some sightseeing, but this really is about being in community. And really what opened the door for me, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I knew I wanted to do something internationally, but it's one thing to travel internationally. It's another thing to work or volunteer internationally. And I started looking at the Peace Corps and USAID and all those larger organizations. And you have to have a pretty specific skill set and policy. I don't have that. And I was having lunch with a colleague one day, and I don't even know how it came up in conversation, but he said, yeah, my sister and her husband, they spend 6 months around the world working at an Airbnb. I'm like, whoa, stop, wind back. How do they find those contacts? And he told me about a website called Workaway, workaway.info. And I liken it to the Airbnb platform, under which all these independent homes are available to rent. Workaway is this platform under which all these independent volunteer opportunities are available. Mm. And in exchange for volunteering 4 to 5 hours a day, you get room and board. I feel like a kid in a candy shop because I truly am a jack of all trades. So to think about, what can I learn next? Where can I go? What community can I get into? It's just kind of overwhelmed. That barrier went away.
That barrier's gone.
Because of technology.
How do I figure out what I'm going to do?
Yeah, the technology, just because of what technology is available. Mm. So loosely, I'd love to go to New Zealand then while I'm in that part of the world, Indonesia, Singapore, but I will come home the end of April, 1st of May, because my oldest will be graduating from college.
Oh, wow.
So I know. So I'll spend a month helping her repack, whatever she needs help with. And then I can't tell you how excited I am. My youngest, she'll be a rising junior is going to go with me all next summer, and she wants to do South America.
So you initially are going to leave.
I have a ticket out 12/31.
12/31, December.
New Year's Eve.
31st, out to Sydney.
To Sydney. Mm-hmm.
You come back in April, and then you go back out in the summer with your younger daughter.
Middle of May. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then how much longer are you going to be out traveling?
So she and I are going to spend 3 months in South America. I will ship her back to school, and I plan to go to Africa for a couple months, and then end up in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. And my kids have bookended it for me. Said, "You'll be home for Christmas." Okay.
Okay, so you have a year.
I can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll see then what. Because I think that was really your bigger question is where is this going to lead? And I'm not retiring. People are saying you're retiring. It's like, no, I'm not retiring. I'm calling this my year of reinventing myself. And I don't know what I'm going to be open to what's next.
Yeah. What is the hardest thing for people to wrap their brain around? What's the question you get the most?
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, you're leaving a good job, and I think humans, we gravitate towards safety and security, and I'm intentionally dropping all that.
Why right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why right now? There's just this internal urge. I can't deny that. And part of I almost didn't do it. I mean, there's a lot of things happening in this building. There's a lot of opportunity. Mass Ave is just fun. A lot of things are happening, and why wouldn't I stay and keep my fingers in that? So my ego almost kept me here. Mm-hmm. But I just feel that internal voice, and I think if we don't honor that, it kind of comes back to kick us. And I don't know if you know my background. I've been through hell and back, to be candid with you. Lost a business, went through a really tough divorce, and what I find is that the universe, this is how I phrase it, the universe gives you opportunities to act upon something, and if you don't take that nudge, it's going to do it for you. Right? You know what I'm talking about. There's that little nudge, and then it gets a little harder, and so I hear that nudge.
Yeah. What was the business that you lost?
Oh, I had a construction company. I had 80 guys working for me. I built it up to an $8 million construction company. Yeah, crazy.
Was that here in Indy now?
It was here in Indy.
And then and what happened?
So we were starting to grow geographically, and we were doing a big project down in Louisville, and we hit sugar sand. So you know the technical, really what happened? I'll never forget my attorney, before I had signed the contract, said, "Don't sign that contract. It's so one-sided. It's a municipal contract." And so sugar sand, if you're digging in a sandbox versus digging in your front yard, the banks are going to stand versus collapsing. So when you get a set of plans, you get literally soil borings along the way, so you know what the soil conditions are and how quickly you're going to be able to move through. The plans didn't show any sand, so I'm just going to round it up. We had put sewer line in at 150 feet a day. We were putting it in at like 80 feet a day. Think of your fixed costs. I mean, this was heavy underground water sewer storm this was a sanitary project, so all the excavators and dotors. Anyway, so I lost, look at me, I'm going to spill my guts. I lost $800,000 on half a project.
Wow.
And I'll never forget when I had to make the calculated decision. And the reason it was so difficult was the way the contract was written. We had a legitimate counterclaim, but in order to make that counterclaim, you had to complete the whole project and then go back and make the claim, close it out, do it all. And when things start going bad, things start going bad. And I was at a $800,000 loss, a hard loss. To finish it, I bet I would have lost $2 million. And it really was my company, and I had lost all my working capital the way it was. So I made the calculated decision to get out of that contract, but it meant that I couldn't go back and make the claim. So I had to eat my $800,000 loss. So it took me a couple years I was trying to right the ship and to fight against it. As you probably work with enough entrepreneurs to know, I knew I was going to be able to turn it around until the day I got my projections and realized I can't do this.
Oh, wow. So you tried to get back on your feet.
Yeah, for 2 years. It was
for
hell.
2 years.
It was hell.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really hard.
And when did it finally go under?
Everything finally closed up in 2005.
So I think you kind of termed that as an opportunity to reinvent yourself. How did you reinvent yourself?
I did, and I literally say that was the most painful gift I've ever been given. Coming from the construction world, I had lost, number one, all my femininity. I had started working with a life coach, business coach, and I realized I was being called to serve. And started networking and you're going to laugh, I got called about this crazy old building, and initially I said no. Because I wanted to do something that was more intentional about women, children, or the environment. And this was a brick building.
Yeah, Athenaeum.
The Athenaeum, right. Yeah. The Athenaeum, it's an old brick building. And two things happened. One, they sent me the job description, and in the job description, they used the phrase, "We want someone with Zen-like qualities." Is that bizarre? These old white Germans. So that got my attention, being a yoga instructor that I am. And when I sat down with the search committee, the founding principles of this old building are a sound mind and a sound body, which is as relevant today as it was 125 years ago.
Yeah.
And I said, I can get my head wrapped around that. To me, it's the most transformational statement is when I first came down here, I have an econ and MBA degree, right? So I'm pretty left brain, which is helpful and at times not very helpful. The Barton Tower is across the street from me. I would have told you that needed to be moved. That property is way too valuable. We should not be having those kind of people living downtown. Well,
and this is a low-income housing project.
Exactly.
And it looks like a very bizarre lampshade.
It's interesting, right?
Yeah, it's concrete also, I believe.
It is concrete, right? It's I think they call it brutalism, right
That's
across from the Athenaeum. Here I am 10, 11 years later, and I will tell you it is exactly where it needs to be. And we need to be exposed to all kinds of people, and we also need to be aware that we're not treating each other as well as we need to be. So I just look at myself, and this building has been a catalyst for me at so many levels.
I mean, I assume that the part of your, I don't know if you want to call it qualifications, one of the reasons why you have an affinity for this job is a construction background.
It helped.
Yeah, because this is an old building.
It's an old building, yeah.
So real quick, just so we have a sense of reference. So you have 2 daughters.
I do.
And you're single. And one daughter is about to finish college.
Senior in high school and a sophomore, or excuse me, senior in college and a sophomore in college.
So, well, you're still putting them through school.
You know what? I'm pretty frugal. I have saved all of it.
So you think you're in good shape for paying for school?
Yeah.
But when it came time to kind of figure out how you're going to make this year work, did you talk to a financial planner? No?
I'm pretty frugal. Yeah. I figured out my finances a long time ago.
Okay.
Though I shouldn't say that. I have a financial planner. And also, you're going to laugh, I've been exposed just recently to Mr. Money Mustache. And if you have never looked at Mr. Money Mustache, it's hilarious, right? But it's also, it's about... And it's so funny. I just recently have been exposed to it, and I'm living most of what he suggests.
And this is a guy who lives back in the 70s. I guess we call it like on $5 a day or $20 a day.
He retired at 35.
Extreme frugality, but living a full life.
Exactly. Well, and I have to tell you. So I sold my car. It'll be 3 years in September. Truly being more intentional about my carbon footprint, and my life as I let go of stuff. My life has gotten exponentially bigger.
What do you mean bigger?
I don't have to maintain things. I don't have the financial responsibility for things. It's literally, I'm able to travel more. I'm able to put more into my savings. There's a peace of mind. There's a security. It's
without
real.
that expensive.
Oh, absolutely.
Of the car. What kind of car did you have?
I had a VWCC. I had a nice car. Yeah, I had a nice car. Much happier without it.
How are you going to get to the airport?
I love Blue Indy.
Oh, of course. Yeah, of course. Okay.
Cheapest way to get there.
I assume that there will be some cost to traveling for a year. Do you have a sense of what that's going to be?
I do. I've got my spreadsheets put in place. I have budgeted $30,000, which isn't a lot, and I think that's probably going to be more than enough. And I have to tell you, I'm playing the points game with my credit cards, and I got a free flight to Sydney, and my first month is covered already with room and board. So yeah.
So what are the big items in $30,000?
It's travel. It's getting back and forth. Yeah. And I do anticipate, while I'm in Africa, I want to do a safari. There are some things that I definitely want to do.
When you said that the advice you were getting was plan less, what less?
Your next destination. I mean, I don't have every stop planned. It's truly letting it unfold. And I'll use my first destination as an example. So that press release went out on a Monday about my leaving, and by Saturday, I had the first volunteer opportunity unfold, and I hadn't even looked for it. A friend reached out, said, "Congratulations, I want to introduce you to another young woman who's living like you're living." It's called Free Living, by the way. She connected me on Facebook. She ended up calling me one night she's traveling in Indonesia. We had a great rapport. She said, "What do you really want to do?" And I said, "I want to volunteer. I want to travel." And she said, "I'm going to connect you to the owner of a yoga retreat center outside of Sydney." And he and I communicated, and by Saturday I had...
Wow.
Yeah. So, and when I talked to her, and there are many others, they have said, you will meet people who will tell you about this amazing permaculture. Just as an example, you want to go work in a permaculture farm somewhere, or you want to go work in an orphanage. They're going to have connections for you.
So you do not have this planned out in the sense like, well, when I'm in Africa, I'm going to do this. And when I'm in Indonesia, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, though I have to say, there is a woman here in Indianapolis who's feeding 14,000 children in Zambia that I've just met. And I may go on site and help her program there. I mean, I am finding those kinds of opportunities. It's pretty remarkable. There is the largest tree reforestation project in India going on in the world right now. And I know a woman who has a contact, and she's connected me to that program. So to that degree, I'm letting things unfold. It's just through word of mouth and things that light me up, that bring me joy is the way I plan on doing.
And when you head down that path, then these things start coming, because you're moving in that direction.
Exactly. And I do have my spreadsheet, right, of each country and the contacts and, who am I going to, reach out to, because that is unfortunately what we've been taught to do. But in terms of knowing where I'm going to be here for 2 weeks, then I'm heading off to this next destination, I'm definitely not doing that.
So when you said that, the experience with the company going under, see, for me, what that would do is make me ultra conservative. As the recession kind of did.
Yeah, I learned, and also going through a divorce, I went from granite and slate to formica and linoleum, and I'm happier. I realized for me that that money wasn't the root of my happiness, and also I'm healthy, smart enough that I can make things work.
Are you secretly very wealthy?
Oh God, no. Good question. No.
What do you do about health insurance?
I'm not going to get it next year. I'm going to go without.
Wow.
I will have something called travel insurance, which will cover if I need to be extracted for some bizarre reason. But I'm taking a risk. I'm taking a calculated risk. It's funny. I've got a brother that's a doctor, and he's my healthcare representative. And we had a conversation just the other day. He said, something happens to me, you're negotiating on my behalf, right? He said, got you covered. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Oh, well, that's a gift. That's great.
I'm not afraid to ask for help. That's the other thing, which is an important resource to being vulnerable.
Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, Mason will continue his conversation with Cassie Stockamp with a focus on the Athenaeum's past and future. But first, if you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe at Google Play, iTunes, or any place you find podcasts. And check out some of our recent episodes, including an interview with the local stars of HGTV's Good Bones about why they'll never get rich renovating houses on TV. You might also enjoy our discussion with Supply Kick CEO Josh Owens about what it's like to manage such a fast-growing company. Now, back to the podcast.
Well, let me ask you about the experience here. So you came here in 2007.
Yeah.
For the 3 or 4 people who listen to this podcast who don't know what the Athenaeum is, tell us very quickly, what is the Athenaeum?
Yeah, so the Athenaeum is this historic German building that was built in 1894 as a clubhouse for the Germans. And it has, over time, in the early 90s, it was close to demolition because of the urban flight and everything happening here, and had a resurgence. And now, still, the core of it still is about making sure we have that historical context with the Germans, but it's this community gathering space.
And a lot of things happen here. I mean, there are many other not-for-profits who are located in this building. There's still a very large theater. Is there a secondary theater as well, or just still the big one?
Still the large one. I mean, there's an auditorium that at times is used as a theater. So last year we had over 1,900 events in the building. Over 800,000 people cross through its doors. Now that includes the Rathskeller and the beer garden and the YMCA and the theater. I mean, it's right. that whole notion.
Right.
But
very good German themed restaurant downstairs.
Yes, yeah. And the beer garden is one of the top 10 hotspots in the city. So, and then we just brought Coat Check Coffee, which is now known as I don't think I'm biased in saying it's the #1 coffee shop in the city. So they've changed that whole craft coffee market.
Where are they in the building? I didn't see them when I walked.
Oh my gosh, on the first floor. Oh,
okay.
Did you walk right in the elevator?
Do I just go into where the theater is?
On the first floor, yeah, you'll be shocked if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen
it. I would encourage all of you. So that kind of goes to everything happening on Mass Ave. Started 4 or 5 years ago, trying to think, how is this building going to remain relevant to all the competition around us? And always in the back of a nonprofit's mind is our donors. And if someone doesn't have an experience here, they're not going to be very likely to give you a check, whatever size it might be. So as there were 2 studies that were going on at that time. One was Plan 2020 and the other was the Velocity Study. And Velocity Study, this was nothing new. We need to attract and retain millennials, right? And I'm just pulling out the pieces that spoke to me. Plan 2020 said we need more third spaces. First space is work, second space is home, third space are public gathering spaces. Clearly we are a public gathering space. At the time, it was not very attractive, especially that lobby space. So it truly was just dead pass-through space. And so got to give the board credit. They allowed me. I said, Europe and Germany are very forward-thinking, very progressive. This building's stuck in time. We need to start moving into that direction. And so if you haven't been down there, you're going to be shocked because it's contemporary. Juxtaposed against this old building. And we found a wonderful design firm, Fanneman Design, that did a beautiful job. And then Coat Check Coffee, we took a risk and the owners took a risk. They were 2 entrepreneurs that had never done this before. It's really an awesome story. So
yeah, and you bring up too, we're on Mass Ave, which most folks in Indianapolis know is a cultural district, arts and culture district, which over the course of maybe about 25, 30 years has gone from, a pretty rough, pretty rough area.
Prostitutes at the corners too. Yeah.
And I lived on here back in the mid 90s.
So you saw it.
It was getting there, but has really. How would you describe it? What has happened here in the last 10 years?
Oh, this last 10 years. I mean, it truly has been a resurgence. The number of people that are living downtown, just up and down the avenue, the new businesses that are here, the new not only businesses, but offices that are starting to office down here. It's the best street in the city. I know I'm a little biased, but it's a really fun place to be.
Yeah,
and the Athenaeum is right where one of the cornerstones of all of it. So
yeah, and they're, like you say, I mean, there's a ton of buildings going now. There's another one going up across the street, 3 or 4-story fancy apartment building. Yeah, and so that's an interesting question. I mean, at some point, probably over a long period of time, you're asking, how do we still fit in here?
That was what started this whole the capital campaign that we just completed, and because we need to have people come in the door, and I can't tell you how people now come up to me and say, I can't tell you how much time I'm spending in your building. I'm going to go work out in the Y, and then I come back and have a cup of coffee, and I'm off to work, and I come back for another meeting, and then I find myself ended up at the beer garden or downstairs for a beer, or I'm here for another meeting or another event. And my philosophy has been we the staff don't program very much. We have a couple German Fest and some small fundraisers, but I've always wanted the community to program the space. That way it's constantly changing and reflecting what's going on in society, and then they also help market. Again, we're lean and mean. There's only 5 of us. We strike ourselves as being much bigger than what we are.
The staff of the foundation, which runs the building.
Yes, exactly. So the foundation owns the physical structure under which you house a YMCA. The beer garden and the Rathskeller, we own the name and liquor license, but there's a private management firm. He has 120 employees. I don't know anything about running a restaurant, so we rely on the expertise of the organizations to help us program the building.
So when you got here, it was 2007, as I recall. What were the 3 things that probably needed to get done the most?
Oh, that's a great question. So, the doors were locked when I first came.
Really?
The staff at the time felt that we couldn't open the doors and let the public in because it would cost too much to maintain. So I had a serious culture change that we had to do, and taking back control of the building, and gave away a lot of free space to get people back into this building and to know that it was here.
Free space for
meetings, just for meetings, offices. But we started off pretty cheap in the office space, and the board. I was pretty clear in that the charge was try to create a sustainable business model. We don't get any state, city money on a routine basis. This is truly it's an earned income model, which from my perspective, for me, it was perfect having a business background. And the and is we're not feeding the hungry or the homeless, which also makes it a little more challenging. Mm-hmm. It's not a sexy, easy ask. So we had to really, again, work at the business model, and I think we've done a pretty good job at this building, though. It truly is this old house. If I had $1 million a year just to put into the windows, I could probably spend it. So.
I know that one of the things that you've been working on for a long time was trying to get it listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Now, what is the significance of that? How does that help you?
So we are on the National Register 3 times. What we were finally able to accomplish was to get listed as a National Historic Landmark.
Gotcha.
There's 2,400 of them in the country. I think we started in 2008 or 9, and it took a good 8 years to get it. So National Historic Landmark status means you're not only significant to your city, your state, but you're significant to the national historical story. And at the time when we were going after it, there was federal money. I think
federal money for
restoration for these kind of historic structures to help to maintain.
As a landmark.
Yeah, as a historic landmark. So the program went away for a while. It has since come back, and I think just last year was the first year. So we can now apply again for some money. So I hate to say it, but these old buildings, they're hard. It's a hard business model. I mean, you look at the old City Hall. I mean, right? It's a beautiful structure. We need to maintain it, and someone needs to occupy it. The cost just to run that building it's a lot.
What needs to happen over the next couple of years here? What are you going to tell whoever the
what I was
president
asking?
is?
Those are great questions. So the theater is the next big thing that needs to be renovated. It's beautiful space. It's just tired. It's 30 plus years old. It needs new LED lighting, new sound system. The tiered seating that's in there is cool, but it's somewhat inflexible. We need to take it back to the original, which truly was just a ballroom, which is a flat floor. And there's all kinds of creative seating that can now be installed, whether it's something that goes underneath the floors and pops up, or again, it just the space, the whole building is flex space. And in order to accommodate everything that goes on, it needs to continue to be, in my opinion, flex space. So that financially is one big piece of it. The parking lot development, we own the lot right next to us, to the east of us. It's gone through a series of litigations. I think we've got one more final hurdle to go through, and then that should be, hopefully, we'll be able to get construction started here fairly soon.
Yeah, and that's a really
it's a beautiful building,
extensive apartment and retail. I forget that there's a commercial
parking garage in the middle,
and with the parking garage, kind of tucked into the
you can't see
a corner.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
And
it's wrapped in.
It's going to be kind of like L-shaped around the building.
Not around this building, but our parking lot is an L shape next to it. So yeah, it's been through HPC and everybody. In fact, many of the neighbors are just really disappointed. Because it should be up and going. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So that'll be a big project that's going to have to be.
But you're not the developer on that.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
we've hired someone else's, Dan Jacobs, Chase Development, who we're working with on that.
Obviously, that will impact what happens here.
Absolutely.
During construction.
Yeah. It's going to be hard. Construction is just hard. And I'm just making sure I say that out loud to all of our tenants, and they all know that. That year of construction is just going to be hard.
You're probably coming back to Indianapolis. But we don't know.
Yeah.
Have you developed a sense yet of the thing you're going to miss about the Athenaeum and or Indianapolis?
It's interesting. So I don't know if miss is the right word, but I'm becoming very aware of, I'm going to use this, I don't know if this is the right way to phrase it, but kind of turning my back on this perceived power base that I have. I can make a phone call and get a return phone call from most people, right or wrong. It's happened over time.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to probably have that authority anymore. So it is really fascinating, because so who am I? I mean, that's this existential question, is I'm going to try to live into it. So I get a lot of wonderful perks and a lot of opportunities because of this position. And I think I'm going to miss that. We'll see.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much, Cassie.
Thank you.
Right. My thanks again to Cassie Stockamp. Before we go, I want to draw your attention to a couple of stories in this week's print edition of IBJ. We have the latest installment in Haley Colombo's series on poverty in Indianapolis, this one focusing on Mayor Joe Hogsett. Hogsett vowed to tackle poverty when he announced his run for office, and again when he was sworn into office. His record, more than halfway through his tenure, includes some concrete programs, as well as some missed opportunities, Haley reports. And also in this week's issue, John Russell delves into complaints from the organizers of the massive Gen Con event that Indianapolis hosts every year. In fact, it was just last weekend. Earlier this year, Gen Con's president told local tourism officials that the Indiana Convention Center needs technology upgrades if they want to keep the event long term. Now, John examines the convention center's shortcomings and brings us up to date on talks between Gen Con, tourism officials, and the city. You can read all about it in IBJ's print edition or online, of course, at IBJ.com. Hey, thanks again for listening to this week's podcast. We'll be back again next week.